Good evening. I am the narrator, and welcome to my parlor. Tonight, our topic is scary clowns. They have become cliche in horror film and literature, and they appear in the paranormal. Why? Clowns aren't meant to be scary, but to be funny. On tonight's upload, I discuss them in search of insights. Writers and illustrators see clowns as easy stock villains for film and television. Viewers see them as such. In fact, I can't think of when I last saw clowns portrayed as anything but. It wasn't always so. Think of Bozo. Think of Krusty the Clown, who, though degenerate, is not frightening that we know of. Some point to John Wayne Gacy and his pogo persona as the turning point. The timing would make sense. But he was just one man, and pogo was secondary to his killings. He didn't stalk his prey while dressed as a clown, nor while killing them, or tucking their corpses in his crawl space. Moreover, media at the time never emphasized it, and it's not the first thing people think of when they think Gacy. Some point to Pennywise from Stephen King's It, but It wasn't an actual clown. It was an eldritch abomination whose true form was that of a giant crustacean. Again, I'm unsure. I think the novel may have had an influence, but the change can't be attributed wholly to it. It is interesting how we speak of clowns, how we conceptualize clowns even unconsciously. They're often spoken of as if they're non-human intelligences, like gray aliens or vampires. They are in fact humans with normal faces beneath their makeup and normal limbs and symmetry beneath their costumes. They are only clowns while working. While not, they're anyone else. Why do clowns frighten? On this channel, I have discussed a number of different entities. I have discussed how their appearances interact with our psychology, why we react to them the way we do. Clowns aren't paranormal. They are characters created and portrayed by humans. Yet, like paranormal entities, they have a look we see. Again, all these appearances are based on things from human culture, things the percipient already knows. In and of themselves, they are just mundane. Their recontextualization makes them frightening. With that in mind, let us analyze clowns. A clown is a humanoid figure with one head, one trunk, two arms, and two legs. Its head has two ears, two eyes, one nose, and two lips. And again, a clown is a person strangely costumed. In other words, clowns look like us, but altered. Human hair doesn't grow like clown wigs do. Human hair isn't naturally blue-green or what have you, though it can be red. Human faces aren't pale with stars and other shapes on them. Human noses aren't red, round, and bulbous and don't squeak when pinched. And humans generally don't wear baggy clothes with stripes and polka dots. In other words, clowns look like a bizarre parody of humans. If they didn't exist and an author or screenwriter had to create paranormal or extraterrestrial characters, they could invent them. They don't look natural. They consist of familiar elements reimagined. This is innately unnerving simply because it is not natural. And yet, as with paranormal entities, their traits aren't necessarily negative. There's nothing negative about bright colors. There's nothing negative about stars, suns, and other shapes. They are representations of natural objects. There's nothing negative about round noses or squeaking sounds. On their own, none of these cause a negative reaction. Clowns, except the sad ones, are always smiling. But a smile can be sinister. It depends on why one is smiling. I think one eerie thing about clowns is their lack of speech. Those portraying them speak behind the scenes, but their characters don't. Their noses simply squeak while their faces are frozen in smiles. Again, this is unnerving simply because it's not the norm. Humans talk. It is how one knows their thoughts, how one connects to them. Whether audience members realize it or not, they see clowns as the other, partly because of their lack of speech. I think. They appear as a different class of thing that doesn't communicate like us, that may not even think like us. Moreover, their onstage proclivities, riding unicycles, emerging in large groups from tiny, brightly painted cars, juggling bottles and quickly creating balloon animals, things that seem to stretch physics. Humans can do such things if trained, though most haven't been, giving the impression of superhuman abilities. Though technically impressive, these activities are again abnormal. They're not daily activities, and they serve no natural purpose. Just as clowns' appearances aren't everyday sights. The two are perfect complements. Watching them, many can subconsciously wonder, what are these things? Where do they come from? What strange realm? It is no surprise that they have become horror villains and that some paranormal entities appear as them. There are reports of clown-like apparitions in homes. I won't share any in this video, but they can be found across Reddit, YouTube, Your Ghost Stories, etc. They follow stock paranormal dynamics. brief, little interaction, and ending in abrupt disappearances. Likely these are the same entities that appear in other forms, doing the same things under a different guise. Again, these intelligences seem to follow human culture and tailor their appearances thereon. Note these stories didn't appear until the 90s or so, after clowns had already been established as villains. Skeptics would thus dismiss them as cultural constructs, whereas I argue for co-creation. Mysterious clowns are most known from the Phantom Clown saga of 1981. For those unfamiliar, it saw children complaining about clowns appearing outside their schools in vans and trying to entice them in. It began in Brookline, Massachusetts in 1981 and quickly spread through the other Boston suburbs, then down to the mid-Atlantic, then westward, all the way to Kansas City. After that, it gradually ceased. The clowns were described as unhygienic and unkempt. Their vans were junkers without license plates. Teachers were told, police were called, parents were notified, yet no one was ever caught. This is strange for obvious reasons. Even in evening traffic in a dense urban area, such vans would have stood out. Many would have been pulled over simply for lacking license plates. Their drivers would have stood out. Either the cops were tremendously inept or they were tremendously skilled. These clowns' identities are unclear. Either they were human or this was a paranormal saga. I'll explore both possibilities. If human, they were part of a network of pedophiles or human traffickers or members of a bizarre cult. Their reach was likely wide if they stretched all the way to Kansas City. Their members have been many, likely in the triple digits. That is, unless it was just a few, and after they finished in one city, they moved on to the next. They must have had a base of operations somewhere in the area, and the vans must have been procured only for the abductions. They must have been hidden when not in use. These individuals were unlikely to drive them to the grocer's or to work. Their failures didn't seem to deter them. Still, a number of things stand out. First, the appearance. While this was before clowns had become villains, the fear of them still existed. Popular culture just had yet to amplify it. Maybe they thought clowns would allure kids. But again, this is just assuming. Second, the vehicles. Why vans? Did they attempt to abduct several kids at each stop? The junkers make sense. They needed cars for this one purpose that they could obtain and discard easily. But at the same time, kids would instinctively associate them with the same things as adults. Maybe they lacked the resources to refurbish them, or just accepted the handicap, the lack of license plates. Again, the cops could have nothing to track, but again, they could be pulled over for their absence. Maybe they reasoned they wouldn't be noticed in traffic. Much like men in black who never fulfill their threats, and black-eyed kids who never gain access to homes, their abduction attempts never succeeded. They were never caught or traced, as if they had just vanished into thin air. One thing about them differs, though. Most NHI are what I call conceptually consistent. That is, their appearances make sense in relation to their behavior and apparent intent. If the Hat Man seeks to scare us, everything about him works to that end. But the same isn't true of the Phantom Clowns. Clowns aren't associated in the popular mind with derelict vans. The two don't go together like the Hat Man's hat and jacket, or BEK's pale skin and Victorian clothing. I think they were human, but they weren't necessarily. Like the BEKs, their operations seemed designed to fail. BEKs unnerve us. We slam the door in their faces. From the Phantom Clowns, children spun and ran. They wore clown makeup but normal clothes. One was described as wearing a t-shirt with a red devil on it. Their vans, again, were derelict. Their demeanor was described as surly and threatening. One man was described as foul-mouthed. I ask the same about them as I do BEKs. Was that all on purpose for some goal that eludes me, or were they simply inept and on a budget? It would have been interesting at the time to ask area candy store employees if suspicious strangers had come in and bought bulk candy. I have a second theory. Maybe it was the government. Maybe a letter agency was exploring social psychology and the clowns were agents. That would explain why no one was ever caught. The cops knew beforehand and had been told to present the appearance of an investigation. This would explain the trajectory, why it began in one city and moved through others before ending where it did. It does look like it followed written directions, like on a tour schedule. Maybe the apparent Fortean motifs were strictly incidental. Skeptics dismiss this case as mass hysteria. They often blame Stephen King's It, even though it came out in 1986. To me, this just answers one unknown with a second unknown. What is mass hysteria? The kids' narratives were coherent. The vans appeared and pulled forth, and the driver spoke to them. They refused, and he drove off. Obviously, there was something to the initial story. Someone must have approached the kid and scared him enough to report it. There's no reason to think there was nothing to those subsequent. How does a viral meme cause people to hallucinate coherent episodes? As always, if listeners have any experiences or insights they would like to share, please email me at tparish1@new.rr.com.